G'day everybody, welcome to another Affinity photo tutorial. This week we're going to do like a war zone picture. As you can see, I have all of my assets down here on the side here, but we're going to start with this picture of this old abandoned building. So let's just call that house for now and make sure we are clicked on the house. I'm going to take my flood selection tool first and turn the tolerance up to about 25. And I'm just going to click on the sky here. And that gives us a fairly good selection just of the area that we want. Let's just grab our selection brush tool here, make it fairly small, and we'll just add these windows as well. Smaller again with our right and left bracket keys, and I'm just going to click in that little blue area there, up the top there, and these windows here. Still clicked on that house layer here. I'm going to hit the delete key and just get rid of the sky. Command D or escape just to get rid of those marching ants. While I'm still on this house layer, I'm going to still use my selection brush tool, make my brush a little bit bigger. I'm just going to select the house now. Just the house, all this house here. And I want a little bit of the foreground as well, this foreground here, and I'm going to come down to about here, just with that selection. And what I'm going to do now on that house layer is go Command X just to get rid of the house and Command V to paste it back again. Again, let's get rid of the marching ants. Now if I turn that picture of the house off down here, you can see I've just got this picture just of the house in the foreground. So that's exactly what we want. So let's change this now just to foreground. Because if I just turn the house off, you can see I've just got the foreground here. And while we're here, we'll grab our erase brush tool and just get rid of that outline. You don't need that outline there. Okay, let's turn that house back on. Make sure we're clicked on that layer. Over to our move tool, I'm going to make the house a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to stretch that house up a little bit bigger and then settle it back down into the landscape there. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. What we're going to do next is go back onto the foreground picture here. Remember, we've cut the house out, so it's just this foreground picture here. And again, on my selection brush tool, I'm just going to select just this bit of the foreground here and this rock here and just about there. And we'll just tidy that up a bit. I'm just holding my Option key down just to tidy that up a little bit. Make my brush a little bit smaller. Doesn't have to be exactly perfect. That's not too bad. Maybe just a little bit more here. What we're going to do there is just go Command J and make a copy. Command D or escape to get rid of those marching ants. And let's just call that foreground front. You'll see why a little bit later. So if we turn off that back now, you can see we just got a copy of that foreground front. So we'll come back and play with that a little bit later. But while we're here on these three layers, the house, the foreground front, and just the foreground, we're going to add to each of these layers an exposure. So let's just do that. Clip it to the house and let's just bring that down a lot darker. Now let's copy that exposure with the Command J and let's clip it to the foreground front. Again, we'll copy that with Command J and we'll clip that to the foreground as well here. So each of these ones now have their own exposure layer. What we'll do now is we'll add our mountains. So I've got this picture of mountains down here. I'll just turn it on and make sure I have that selected. We're still on our selection brush tool, so let's just select those mountains here. And maybe a bit of that ground there as well. So just about there. Again on those mountains, let's go Command J, turn off the old mountains. This one we don't need anymore, so we can turn it off and make sure we're on this selection. So get rid of those marching ants, make our picture a little bit smaller with our Command minus. Grab our move tool up here and let's stretch those mountains out. And maybe about there looks pretty good. On those mountains, again, let's add an exposure. We're going to drag it and clip it to the mountains and then darken those mountains quite a bit. And again, we can come back and tweak them later. Now, between those mountains and the house, I'm going to add a pixel layer. Just here, I'm going to call this one Fog and Mist. On this layer here, I'm going to grab my brush. I want a nice soft brush. The color I want, I'm going to double click and I want sort of a gray light color. And just on that layer there, I'm going to make my brush quite big. Got the flow set to 25% and I'm just going to add some mist in there and drop the opacity a little bit, just a tiny little bit of mist, just to sort of separate the mountains and that house. Very, very small detail, that's okay, and we'll use that fog and mist again a little bit later. Let's turn on our sky now. So I've got this picture here of the sky, so I'll just call that sky. And I'll turn that on. So I've got my sky in the background. Again, I'm going to add an exposure layer to that sky because I want to darken it up a little bit and clip it to the sky and just make that sky a little bit darker. Not looking too bad. Make maybe the house on our move tool. Just might make that a little bit bigger. Maybe about there. So what we can do next is come up here to the picture of our helicopter. Now I've already created this helicopter, so I've just got the picture of the helicopter. I cut the helicopter out using my selection brush tool and added the flames and the debris to it. So this helicopter I will make available on the Buy Me a Coffee site for you, just complete like this, so you can just use it straight away. What I'm going to do is move the helicopter up quite a bit. Maybe resize it a little bit to about there. Looks pretty good. What I'll do is add an exposure again because I want to make it a little bit darker. So we'll just bring that down a little bit, the darkness. So on my helicopter layer here, I'm going to add a new pixel layer, clip it to the helicopter. I'm going to change the blend mode to overlay. And for this pixel layer, I want a really sort of nice orangey color, sort of a darker, redder orange, maybe about there, that sort of orangey color. Let's activate that on our brush. Still got our flow at 25%. We're on this pixel layer here on overlay. Let's make this helicopter a little bit bigger. I just want to paint some of that orange color just on the edges here. Just making some highlights around the helicopter. That a bit smaller. Okay, I'm happy with that. What I'm going to do is just drop that flow down to about 5% now. Make my brush a little bit bigger. Just put a small little bit of color coming from all those flames. Again, on the helicopter, I'm going to add another exposure. Clip that one again. I'm going to make that quite bright and Command I. Colors back to default with D on my keyboard. Still on my brush. Let's bring that back up to 25% on the flow. Make my brush a little bit smaller now, and we want to paint in white. And I'm just going to highlight just the front of that helicopter here from this light sort of coming from this way. Okay, Command 0. I think that looks pretty good. We can always just drop the exposure on that a little bit more, make it a little bit darker. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got our helicopter done. So now let's add another explosion. This one down here. So let's click on that. Change the blend mode to screen. Let's move this one down. It's behind the house, so just about there. Looks pretty good. I want to get rid of all these little sparkly, so I'm on that explosion layer, grabbing my erase brush tool. Let's bring that flow down to about 35%. 25%. Bigger brush, and let's just get rid of those sort of sparkles. Let's just grab our move tool. Let's just move that down a little bit so we've got some of that behind the house and maybe rotate it. That's not too bad. Back on our erase tool just to get rid of those harsh sparkly lines there. And there we go, that's not looking too bad. Now I've got this one of the debris here as well, so I'm going to turn that on. Grab my move tool and let's just move that sort of over there and turn that down to about maybe 70%. There we go, about like that. Going to duplicate that with the Command J. Come up to Arrange and Flip Horizontal, and we'll just put a bit over here as well. Command 0 to get back to the normal size. Not looking too bad. On that house layer, need it to look a little bit redder, so I'm going to add a recolor. Clip that to the house. Bring it into those sort of reddy colors. Let's bring down the saturation. Looks okay, about there. Now I'm going to add some flames. So I've got this picture of flames here. So let's just call that flames. Turning those on. I want those in front of the house up here. The blend mode is going to be screen. And I want these flames to look like they're coming out of these windows here. Just turn that around. Command J for another one. Let's turn that one around. Coming out of that window, maybe a bit smaller. And Command J, we might just turn that around and put that one sort of down here in this window. One more, Command J for this window here. Make that a bit bigger. So it looks like those flames are coming out of those windows. They've blown through from the other side of the house. And we can just group all of those. Click on the top one, click on the bottom one, Command G to group, and let's call those flames. So the next thing we'll do is we will add our man up here. So let's click on the picture of our man, and I've got this picture from the photo manipulation, and this figure is from Photo Manipulation Neo Stock, and I'll link that below. So I've got my man here, and you can see I've added a tattoo to the back of his head, and I've added this logo to the back of his bulletproof vest here, and also added this shotgun. I'll add a little bonus section at the end of this video to show you exactly how I created this logo and the tattoo. So anyway, I've got this hat here as well, so we'll turn on the hat, and I'm going to clip that to our man. Bring that down sort of like one of those commando hats and just turn it. Make it a little bit bigger. Just so he's got one of those sort of commando hats on there. So there we go. Let's click on our man now. What I'm going to do with him is add an exposure as normal. Clip that to our man and darken him up a little bit. Also going to add a new pixel layer. Clip that to our man. Let's change that to overlay. Again, I'm going to grab a nice sort of orangey color, sort of about here, I think. And on that layer, I'm going to bring up our man a little bit bigger. Make sure we're on that pixel layer. Make sure it's on overlay. We have our brush, 25%. Make sure we're on that orange color that we chose. And let's just add some of that color to our figure here. Can always turn that down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to add another exposure. This one again I'm going to make quite bright, and then invert it with the Command I. Get my colors back to default. Painting in white, still got my brush, still on 25%. Just highlight some of that area a little bit more. Okay, happy with that. So I'm going to collapse that. I'm going to copy that man with Command J. The bottom one here on my move tool. I'm going to move over a little bit smaller and a little bit wider. Maybe about there. With this one, I'm going to grab my erase brush because I don't want them to both have the same shotgun here. So I'm going to make that really small and I'm going to erase all the way down to here. So it just looks like he's got a handgun there and not a shotgun. So that looks pretty good. Might just make this man a little bit smaller and this one a bit smaller too. About there. Okay, for this man here, I'm going to add a backpack. So I'm going to turn that backpack on and I'm going to put it above that man here and make that a bit smaller. Zoom in a little bit smaller, and let's just make sure that fits okay. Let's grab another exposure layer onto that backpack. Let's make that a little darker. Let's add another pixel layer and clip it again to overlay. Grabbing our brush, let's grab that orange color again, and with our brush about 25%, let's just add some little bit of color to the side there. Not too much. Looks okay. I'm going to copy that, Command 0 back to our man. I'm going to copy that backpack with Command J, and one of the copies I'm going to bring down here like it's abandoned. Just about there. So remember that foreground front that we made a copy of earlier? I'm going to bring that right up to the top. So let's bring that right up to the top. And that's just going to go in front of the men here, hiding that backpack. We can actually just lift it up a tiny bit. It looks okay. And their feet as well. So right on top, we'll add another pixel layer. We'll change that to overlay. We'll get our colors back to default and change to black by hitting X on our keyboard. Just with my brush, let's just add a little bit of darkness behind each one of these men. And on that foreground front, just going to bring that down a little bit darker. About there. Okay, that foreground here, we need to make that a little bit darker. And the foreground on the house, we need to make that a little bit darker. About like that. It's getting some of that light from the fire here. Okay, let's add our smoke. So let's add some smoke. There's pictures of smoke here. I'm going to bring that one, and I want it behind the house. So let's just move that. Bring the opacity down a little bit. Let's copy that, Command J. Come up to Arrange and flip horizontal, and we'll bring another one over here behind the house. Just a bit of smoke coming up here. We'll add another one, Command J, and I'm going to put that one, move it right up to the top. And just turn that round. I'm going to stretch that out a little bit here. Just to add a little bit of smoke on that side. Again, let's come down to the mountains. This is where we're doing all the tweaking. Let's double click on that exposure. Just down a little bit more. Let's add our fire flares now. I've got this picture of fire flares, so let's add those into the picture. About there. Let's make another copy, make them a bit smaller, and add some over here, and maybe turn them a little bit about there. Okay, on each of our men, it's a bit too light on the back here, so just on this exposure here, grabbing our brush, painting in black, just get rid of that light on the back of their necks there. And on this man as well. There we go, all good. So there you go, we've got all of our assets used. As I said, I will put the helicopter on the Buy Me a Coffee site. All the other pictures used will be linked below for you to grab if you want to grab them. The last thing that I will do is add another pixel layer. This one I'll just leave on normal. I'm going to grab my brush, and this one I'm going to grab. You can just use a nice soft brush, but I've got these fog brushes here, so I might just grab one of those, maybe this one, making this picture a little bit smaller. Going back to that grey colour again, sort of light grey, might just add sort of that little bit of mist over there, change it to about 50%, and now I'm going to come up to layer, merge visible, do my old trick. You can use develop or the tone mapping. I like to use the tone mapping just to get a little bit more detail. The tone compression I'm going to have right down at 5%, a little bit of contrast, bringing the exposure down. Going to add on the white balance. I'm going to bring it into a bit warmer. A little bit down on the saturation, up on the vibrance, and up on the detail refinement, about 50% on each one of those. And that's not looking too bad, so I'll hit apply. Last thing I'll do is add my curves just to right on top, just to add a little bit of contrast there, making it a little bit darker, and just making that little S curve. Command 0. So there you go, everybody. That is my picture for this week. I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Don't forget, I'll have that picture of the helicopter on the Buy Me a Coffee site, so you can head over there and get that absolutely free. And also, if you'd like to support my channel, you can do that there as well. There's also the super link thanks below if you do want to support my channel. And don't forget, at the end of this video you can watch how I did the tattoo and the little logo here on the back of the soldier. But until next time, I'm going to say to you, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay guys, I just wanted to show you quickly how I did the sort of logo on the back of the man here, the tattoo and the shotgun. So we'll start off with this logo here. I'm just going to grab my move tool and I'm just going to position it onto bulletproof vest where I want it here. Make another copy with Command J. On this top copy here, let's grab our flood fill tool, and on that top one here we're just going to make a white copy. So make that white. Let's come up to the blend mode here and change that to soft light. Black copy will change to soft light as well. Going to move the black copy on top. And just on our move tool here and our arrow keys, whatever way we move this now, if I move it to the left, you'll see I'll get this raised indentation onto the vest here. If I move my arrow key to the right, you'll see I'll get an indented one here as well. So that's how I did the logo. With the tattoo on the back of his head, I've just used this picture here. I've clipped it to our man here and then just moved it into position where I wanted it, and change the blend mode again to soft light. And again, you can just drop the opacity a little bit just for that tattoo and move it around where you want. And for the shotgun here, I've just grabbed this picture of the shotgun, just move this into place, just moved it around until it sort of matches about there. Let's zoom in a little bit. And then just on my mesh warp tool here, I've just refined it a little bit. Moving that into place there, and just a little bit of refinement. Hit apply, Command 0, and that is the shotgun, the tattoo, and the logo on back of the man.